right, beloveds, this is Shakti speaking. I am very delighted to welcome you on this call about reimagining relationships. And a beautiful topic to be speaking about on a beautiful day. I am finding myself in Brazil today, where I am spending time at the Casa of John of God, a quite magnificent man who has the capacity to connect those who come to visit him to the realm of possibility, is my experience. And so I bring that quality to you as I share with you today in this webinar. What I'd like to ask just on a practical level is that when you join the call is please to put your video off. That will give us the most bandwidth for you to be able to see me clearly. At some point, I will invite you to post questions, and the chat box for questions is at the bottom of your screen. If you scroll over it, you'll find it. I want to ask you to please keep your questions to the end. And if you have any technical problems, please to let Tiffany know. She's the one who will be in charge of that. I need to focus on the sharing while I'm speaking to you. All right, so again, a very warm welcome to you all. And this is Shakti speaking from Brazil today. And our topic is reimagining relationships. So in this beautiful opportunity we have to be human beings on planet Earth, one of the most tender and most passionate experiences we can have as human beings is to be in relationship. Since the moment that we're born, actually as infants, our survival depends on our relationship with those who are taking care of us. Hopefully those will be our parents. The bonding that happens between my body and the body of my mother is something that will have an effect on me for the rest of my life. The relationships that I'm going to have at the beginning of my life are going to be very formative for the rest of my experience of being in the human body. And also in later life in my relationships with romantic or sexual partners. So as many of us have discovered is that even though this is such a basic and fundamental human need to be in intimate relationship with other human beings, it's also one of the most difficult experiences that we have. One of the most complex, one of the experiences that are most fraught with mysteries. And so what I'd like to share with you today is some guidance on 5 fundamental principles that can be really useful for any of us that are interested in having a more conscious and a more open relationship with other human beings. Of course, when we look around us in the world that we live in, we don't have many good examples of good relationships, especially not primary sexual or romantic partnerships. Many of us have grown up in homes where our parents had less than good relationships with each other, or sometimes even plain abusive relationships. We've come from lineages where for generations our relationships were influenced by a certain perceptions of masculinity and femininity. And those memories stay in our systems, they stay in our DNA, even though we may be living in a post-patriarchal time. There are still memories that remain. And the memories that remain in our systems are basically all those that in our own life and also in the life of our predecessors, the lineages that we come from, have not been fully digested or brought to full awareness or consciousness. So just to explain that briefly, is to say that when we as human beings get born, from the moment that we're born, the chances are good that we're going to have experiences that feel in the moment too overwhelming. For instance, the first time your mother wasn't there to give you the breast or the bottle, or she wasn't there when you screamed and you needed her to hold you or change your nappy. in a little baby system that is so dependent and so vulnerable, those first experiences can leave a lasting impression. And in the overwhelm of the moment, our nervous system can shut down and go into a freeze response. And then what happens is that the body remembers that experience, and it keeps reminding us of that experience by something that we could perceive as a repetition of patterns in our life. So, for instance, every time that I come closer to the real intimacy that I see is available here with this beautiful being that I've just met, or that I'm in a relationship with and I'm going to a next level with, I suddenly find myself freezing, and the intimacy that I so longed for becomes unavailable to me. My body is not able to open, my heart is not able to open, or I end up doing something that makes it all shut down. So I think we've all experienced situations where, despite our best intentions to respond in one way, we find ourselves responding in the very opposite way in a situation of intimate relating. And the reason for that is because there are memories in our past, can be our individual past or our collective past, that are sitting there unprocessed, where in the moment where we felt them, it was too much to feel. And so somehow we suppressed the memory, we didn't feel the feelings. And we put the feelings away for later, like my first Tantra teacher said. And now is later, is what we could say. We have an opportunity now through the wise body to meet what we've been putting away and what we haven't been able to deal with in the past. And the beautiful thing about relationships is that they always guide us back towards discovering what it is we need to see about ourselves, and to falling in love with ourselves in a deeper way. Of course, the conditioning of the world that we grow up in is that there is this Mr. or Mrs. Right out there that is going to finally give us peace and love and happiness, and we're going to live happily ever after. And although it's not impossible for that to happen, there certainly are people on the planet who've been together for a lifetime. I think many of us have discovered that we keep chasing after what seems to be an impossible goal, even when we're in a committed and bonded relationship. We find ourselves still being uncomfortable and meeting places where we wonder if we could have something better, or how we could improve this so that it feels more satisfying. And our tendency always is to believe that in some way it must be because of the other, that if I just found a better partner, or on the other hand, if I just kind of like improved myself so that I could be more lovable, then things would be better. And both of those come from our conditioning. What is ultimately more true is that our primary love affair is going to be with ourselves. And so even though a lot inside of us wants to scream against that and say that's just not true, it's just that I haven't found the right person, at the end of the day, it comes down to this primary calling for us as human beings is to learn to love ourselves. And what that really means is, of course, a big question, and is part of what I hope to answer for you to some degree through this call today. So what the structure of the call is going to be is I'd like to share with you those 5 principles for opening up to the realm of possibility in relationship. I'd like to start with that. And then after that, I'm going to be introducing to a beautiful course that I'm going to be presenting that's called The Soulmate Within. And this course is an elaboration and a place to practice what I've been introducing you to during this call. And then there'll be some time for you to ask questions and to share at the end of the call as well. The call will be somewhere between an hour and 90 minutes. All right, so Let me begin by introducing then what I mean by the 5 principles for living in the realm of possibility and relationship, or being able to reimagine our relationship life. For most of us, our perception of what's possible in relationship is conditioned by our own personal experience, the experiences we've had up till now in relationship. And it's also conditioned by what we've seen around us in our own life and also in our lineage and our ancestry. If we don't remember it, in our mind, our unconscious remembers the experiences that have preceded us in this moment. And when we look at these experiences, we are staring into what feels very much like the realm of limitation, the limitations of relationship. And I'm sure that all of us have at some point felt like we are staring into a wall, or we beating our heads against a brick wall because we so want to do things differently. But we end up just repeating patterns, and we find that what we so wanted seems to be just not available to us, or we start to believe that everybody around us is just not up to scratch, and maybe there are no people of the gender that I'm attracted to that actually are going to be worthy partners for us. And so in the 3D reality, in the realm of limitations, this is what we end up kind of bumping into all the time, is that we, our familiar neural pathways are telling us that some things are possible and other things are not. And what we deeply know to be possible, we just can't access. So what it's going to take is a reimagining of what we perceive to be relationships. If we are limited by what we've experienced so far, or even the existing paradigms that we see around us, then we're still operating in the realm of limitation. Reimagining relationship means that I open up to the finest frequency of my own inner knowing as to what is possible in my relating with any other human being, whether that be my child, my beloved, my parents, my friends, my colleagues. It requires a deep attunement to the heart. It requires a refinement in our ability to be in relating. And that refinement is going to start by returning to ourselves. And this is where I'm going to start introducing to you the 5 principles for being able to reimagine our relationship life. And by the way, for those of you who joined late, welcome to Brazil. I am in a very noisy country. My apologies for the background sounds, but life is happening here on full scale. All right, so the first principle that we need to have a look at is to understand that what you see in whoever you are in relationship with is a mirror on some level of yourself. Our opportunity challenge is to learn how to see and to work with this mirror. So again, I know that it's very tempting to believe that the difficulties that we experience in relationships, whether that be with a child or a parent or a lover, are because of the other person's shortcomings. But at the end of the day, in this holographic universe where everything is an expression of this one, and that is me in the first place, it all points back to ourselves and to an invitation to a deeper discovery of who we are. Especially in relationships, we get shown the parts of us that we are not aware of. And that revelation happens in 2 ways. Sometimes our partners are direct mirrors for us of aspects of ourselves that we haven't owned or integrated or seen. And thus they are the mirror for us of what we haven't seen in ourselves. Or sometimes our relationship dynamics, the dynamic between me and another person, are what reveal to us what there is for us to see in the mirror. And I'm going to explain this to you with an example. In my late 20s, I was in a beautiful relationship, mind you, with an older man who was a yogi and a very disciplined man who was very much a mirror of the aspect of myself that was very disciplined. I was at that point finishing a PhD and had a very, very strict diet, disciplined lifestyle, and life seemed very good. But then one day it happened that I went to a work event, and at this work event there was a hot spring. And during the evening that we arrived, I got this impulse to go and swim in this beautiful space where the pillars were lit up and the water was lit up as well, but everything else was black. And as I found myself taking off my gown, I was completely convinced that I was the only person there. And diving into these black waters, as I came up out of the waters, I looked into the face of a dark-haired man with dark eyes and a dark face that was actually in the water with me. And as I looked into his eyes, I knew that I was in trouble. And the reason for that was because the attraction between us was so intense. And so what then started to happen was I tried my very best not to follow this attraction, but as many of you might know, attraction has its own way. And I ended up being in a relationship with this wild man who was an artist and a maverick of many kinds. And I ended up leaving the disciplined yogi. So I kind of switched from one side of a polarity to the other. And this wild man introduced me to levels of pleasure and delight that was way beyond my comfort zone. He had me eating ice cream, which I never would eat, and drinking champagne at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and have wild sexual explorations that I would never have thought a year or two before that I would ever be up for. The relationship itself with this man, however delicious it was and however passionate and intense, only lasted for 3 months. And then the relationship ended, but for the next 3 years, I found myself still in some ways deeply attached to this man. Not only was I attached to him in my inner world, I was thinking about him all the time, but I also found that the relationships that I had since then were all displaying a similar pattern or a similar characteristics, which is what I would call the Dionysian quality. So Dionysus, for those of you who know Greek mythology, is the god of women and wine, the god of sensual pleasure, and there's a whole ritual that is named after him, which is sometimes called the Bacchanalian festivals. And it's all about great sensual indulgence and forgetting all the usual moral rules. So the men that I was attracting in my life all seemed to have something of that quality to them. And so one day I found myself processing this again. Why is it that I keep being attracted to the same archetype of man, and that I'm still attracted to this man that I now haven't been in a relationship with for 3 years? And what I discovered is suddenly I became aware of my father, my dearly beloved father, who was actually, I suddenly realized, also very much a Dionysian man. He was an academic, but he was also an artist. And so when I grew up with a home full of writers who were extremely creative, but also very oftentimes had way too much wine. And so I remember scenes of what seemed to my young girl spirit way too much exposure to a drunken, debauched lifestyle where people were just doing whatever they wanted to do. Even though my father was actually a really good man, he had this side to him. And so what happened was that in my own spirit, I suppressed that quality. Something in me said no to it. No, I will not do that. So even as an adolescent, I wouldn't go to parties because I just didn't want to have that kind of energy around me. That's how extreme my internal unconscious no was. And so what I realized in that moment when I saw that my father had this Dionysian quality is that actually I had suppressed that quality in myself. And so I realized that I was, through my insistence that I was not going to be like my father, I had completely suppressed the quality of Dionysus. Now the thing is, there's the shadow side of Dionysus where he's always looking for the next lover and always wanting more wine and more experience. But there's the other side of Dionysus where he is a extremely charismatic leader that is also very comfortable with his body and with sensuality. So the interesting thing that happened is the moment that I saw my suppression of the Dionysian quality in me as mirrored by them in my life, and I opened up to that quality, I started to also get access to these positive qualities of the Dionysian archetype. So there was a charisma that started to develop in my personality, an access to sensuality, an ability to share that deep enjoyment in the body with other human beings. And so pretty soon I started to develop the career, which is now what I do, which is teaching Tantra, the art of conscious sexuality. And so if I had not seen in the mirror what that lover was trying to show me, of course, unbeknownst to him, he was trying to show me an aspect of myself that I had to come to a point of saying yes to in order for me to be able to do the work that I'm now doing. And so you can see the importance that that mirror held for me. If I had not been willing or able to take on that that reflection that he'd given me, my whole life path, in a way, wouldn't have developed into the realm of possibility which it has developed. And that possibility, I must tell you, is not something that was on my horizon. It wasn't part of my past. It wasn't something I didn't even know about Tantra at the time that I stepped into this work. It came to me from a deep inner calling which I followed. And part of what made it clear to me was listening and seeing the mirror that a significant person of the opposite gender had held for me. And so that is the first important principle, is the principle of the understanding that what you see in another is a mirror of yourself. And that our invitation is really to learn to see, to learn how to see and to work with that mirror. The second theme is that in your primary relationship, actually, is to know that your primary relationship is never going to be with somebody else. It's always going to be with you. It always begins and ends with you. So somebody else, often of the opposite gender, can be a mirror for you of this inner relationship. But it always is about you discovering the relationship between your inner masculine and feminine. So for those of you who didn't know that, the gendered body that you've been born into is not the only body that you've got. There is this one body, but in your spirit, in your psyche, you are both masculine and feminine. Because of the gender that we're born into, we get conditioned to identify with a certain orientation, which would be masculine or feminine. But the other side is equally and as much present in us. And for us to really develop a deeply loving relationship with ourselves, then we will need to learn to become in relationship with, in my case, being in a woman's body, with my inner masculine. The men who show up in my life, whether they be my father, my brother, my lovers, my dear friends, my enemies, will all be mirrors of aspects of my inner masculine. And the work that I have to do, the opportunity that I have, is to see what it is that these people are mirroring for me. Because there are many faces to who we are. So an example of this is that a dear friend of mine at some point found herself being constantly attracted to very successful but also equally unavailable businessmen. Men who were able to make really big money in the world but were not able to show up in intimate relating. And so what she ended up seeing in that mirror is that there is an aspect of her inner masculine, actually, that wanted to develop more skill in the economic world, and it was not the way that she was oriented at that point. So she applied herself to it, and she started to study business, and she found herself actually being able to incorporate those qualities that she kept on projecting onto a man outside of her, as part of her own being and her own personality, and the range of what she was able to live into and express as a human being. And of course, you can imagine that that brought a huge amount of relief to her expansion, integration in her own psyche, because ultimately our relationship life is always there to help us with our own evolution and growth. And what's also really good is that it changed her relationship life so that she didn't keep being attracted to the same archetype of men all the time. The third principle for being able to really live in an integrous orientation to relationships, so that we can start to reimagine what's possible, is to see that there are many unconscious characters living inside of us. All right, so we each have our own conscious personality, right? So, for instance, in my case, I might have a conscious personality that I'm a teacher, that I'm a tantra teacher, that I'm a single woman, that I'm not a mother, that I'm South African. We have all these ways that we perceive ourselves. That I'm a woman. I don't know if I said that already. But apart from those identities which we are consciously or consciously identified with, there are many different characteristics which show up in our behavior, especially in our behavior in relationship, which comes from the unconscious. And so those can be coming from the collective unconscious. They can be coming from beliefs that we've inherited as to what is worthy, what is good, what we should aspire to. It could be coming from unconscious beliefs about what we should be avoiding, how we should not be. For instance, if as a woman I grow up in a patriarchal time, then I certainly grow up with a belief that a woman should never be weak. I could even grow up with a belief that women shouldn't show emotion, that I must do everything I can to be independent and to be in control. And so I may not have that consciously articulated, but unconsciously that could be playing out in my psyche. And if it does, then it can show up in my relationship life as me becoming an ice queen, a matriarch, using various strategies of manipulation in order to control men. And I might be doing this unconsciously. If, on the other hand, my conditioning is, or something in my past experience is, that I never got the love from my father that I really so desperately needed from him, it could happen that in my relationship life, I show up as daddy's little girl. And I use my innocence and my ability to emotionally mold myself to somebody else's needs as a way to get intimacy. But then at the same time, even though I may be in a relationship, I could also experience that I'm not actually sexually open. and that I'm not actually feeling anything, because inside I'm daddy's little girl. Daddy's little girl is not sexual. She's still looking for that deep emotional bonding with somebody. In my masculine and in the masculine of a man, there are also these unconscious parts that can show up in our relationships. For instance, I could find myself behaving like an accountant. Maybe in my life I'm an accountant and I'm counting numbers all the time, and now I'm calculating how much have I given in this relationship and how much have I received. Or maybe I'm acting like the CEO, like I'm the boss, I make decisions here, and nobody else really has a say in this. Or I could be acting like the rebellious apprentice, like, okay, I actually feel quite insecure in relationships, so I'd rather let you take the lead. But then I'm going to do everything in my ability to undermine you, because actually I want to show you that I have some power as well. So as you can see, there are many different archetypes, little unconscious archetypes that can be playing out in our relationship life. And in a way, it doesn't matter so much whether we call them feminine or masculine, but they can tend to have a flavor of masculine or feminine archetypes. What is important is that we start to notice these unconscious characters that live inside of us, and to start to have a compassionate and even humorous relationship with them, so that when I see the princess in me coming up again and saying, well, nobody's good enough for me and that's why I'm not in a relationship, or you're just not good enough for me, or you're not giving me what I need and therefore I'm going to stay in my tower and not open up to you until you change and you become perfect. And then if I see the princess coming up, I can see, oh, it's the princess again. And I can, kind of act that out. Oh, I'm such a princess. I'm so forlorn. I am so beautiful. Nobody understands me. I'm just going to sit here in my tower and comb my hair and feel really miserable because I'm so special. And I'm so much more special than anybody else on the planet. And then, of course, once I start acting it out for myself a bit like that, it starts to become funny and it becomes lighter, and I start to develop a conscious relationship with these parts of me that otherwise would actually be controlling my relationship behind the scene. All my relationships, actually. And you can see there are many different shapes in which they appear, these relationship caricatures that live inside of us. Then the fourth principle that I'd like to draw to your attention is that the masculine and the feminine inside us exist actually on 3 different levels. And this level characterization is something that I developed. There's nothing set in stone about it, but I find it very useful. I find that many people have a resistance to the idea of thinking about masculinity and femininity. And just the resistance to that is because of what is in the unconscious masculine and the unconscious feminine. So if we were to have a look at the unconscious masculine, and we go right back to the beginning of the human species, where most of our energy was really going into survival and fighting against saber-toothed tigers and dinosaurs and who knows what else. Our first evolutionary development was about survival and about getting what we want, and therefore still in the psyche of the unconscious masculine is this archetype that will, want to get from the lover, whether the lover be a woman or a man, what I want. I want my pleasure. And so this caricature of the man grabbing the woman, the caveman, grabbing the woman by the hair and dragging her into his cave, and then having sex with her in the missionary position, is very much an expression of that unconscious masculine. The unconscious masculine in our sexuality, whether we are in male or female bodies, is very driven by the urge for, one could say, orgasm, ejaculatory orgasm specifically. the big explosion, the big release, the big letting go of the tension that I've built up, and the sense that I can get fulfillment or pleasure from this experience. And actually, the unconscious masculine in us is not that interested in relationship, is not interested so much in intimacy or bonding. It's more interested in that pleasure of what in the sexual exchange. The unconscious feminine in us is an interesting counterpart of this caricature, because she actually just wants emotional fulfillment or gratification. In that example that I gave of Daddy's little girl, it's a very good one. So we grow up with our fathers being the first men in our lives, and so the first model of what it would be like to be in an intimate relationship with a man. And for many of us, that relationship was not as full or as complete as our hearts may have wanted it. And so we're still looking for, if we're heterosexual, for that man that is going to be fulfilling us or completing us or giving us the message that I'm lovable, that I'm good enough, that I'm acceptable. And so many women find themselves in relationships with men where they are settling for something which isn't deeply fulfilling and certainly not sexually fulfilling. At least they've got the security that they're with somebody and that this person has a bond with them in some other way. But as you can see, both of these, the unconscious masculine and feminine, have their there's going to come a time when that's not going to be fulfilling for us anymore. And that's the time when we start to meet the conscious masculine and feminine. The time when the masculine in us is going to want to develop skillful action in lovemaking, in relating, in our lives, on every level. It's going to want to be able to not just be pulled hither and thither by unconscious attractions, but actually be able to stay focused and one-directed. The conscious feminine in us wants to start to feel herself inside her body. She wants to feel pleasure. She wants to feel the sensation that is available underneath her skin and in her skin and in her organs and in her heart. And so there's the invitation to start to open the body and to start to open the heart as well, in more than the projecting way of hoping that somebody else will love me because I'm not willing to love myself. It's really an invitation to return to loving ourselves. And then the final level of the masculine and feminine is what I call the deep masculine and feminine, or the superconscious level, where we're now looking at the spiritual potential of the feminine, which is that opening of the heart becomes so big that we are able to love all of humanity, that we live in a state of an open heart and actually love all beings, so that our hearts are able to perceive the rhythms and the pulses of the earth, of the creatures who live on this earth. Our hearts are in tune with our own divine essence. And our bodies are able to feel and perceive so much more than just what is happening inside our own skin. When the deep masculine opens in us, there is a stillness that develops, an ability to drop out of time and space and to find ourselves in the center of all of life, one could say, that moment where everything becomes infinitely quiet because I'm not identified with anything at all anymore. It's a different experience. It's a state of oneness that one could say is the development of consciousness, pure consciousness, as silence, as presence, and sometimes even called as absence, because we fall into such a deep state in that place that we're not identified with any experience at all anymore. And then, in the beautiful love affair of Shakti and Shiva, or the masculine and feminine divine, Shiva, the masculine principle, brings that clarity, that clear mind, into his relationship with the feminine principle in us. With Shakti, is the embodiment and the heart. and the two of them merge. They come together in this beautiful position where their legs are wrapped around each other and their arms are wrapped around each other, and they're breathing each other's breaths. And there's a union that happens between the clear, conscious mind and the deeply embodied love that we become. And so that the consciousness that we've reached to then becomes embodied in our daily living and also in our relationships. All right, so then the final principle that I wanted to share with you is that if you clean up your inner relationship life, your outer relationship life will follow suit. And this is true, is that if you do the inner work, which is what I'm going to be inviting you to in this course, The Soulmate Within, which I'm going to introduce in a moment. By doing that inner work, you create the fertile ground for having a relationship that is in alignment with your highest good. And to end off this section of the talk with the example that I began with, when I was finally willing to see and to embrace the Dionysian archetype in myself, instead of just projecting it or being attracted to it in the men that I was attracted to, I found myself, through the integration and the processing, interestingly enough, not attracting those kind of sexual partners anymore, because I didn't need those lessons anymore. And then the next level of relationship started to open up for me, where there were more expanded senses of myself that I was able to meet and to include and expand into. All right, people, so at this point, I want to invite you, I'm excited to introduce you to The Soulmate Within. As you can hear from the title, that ultimately the soulmate that we're looking for is not going to be the one that we're going to find in a body. Yes, maybe we're lucky enough in this lifetime to find that beautiful partner that feels like they totally complete and complement our being. But in the first place, that soulmate is going to be you discovering the relationship between your own inner masculine and feminine. That is your primary relationship, is the inner one. And how to develop that relationship, I've created this course that is called The Soulmate Within. And if you look on your chat box in the Zoom screen, at the bottom of the screen there's a chat box and it's lit up now. And if you click on it, it's lit up in orange, then you'll see that Tiffany's typed in for you there the link to the sales page, or the page in which I outlined for you this course, The Soulmate Within. So I encourage you to open it up, because I'm going to be speaking to it right now. If you want to go to my website, shaktimalan.com, you can click on the resources button. Let me just make sure here. Is it the resources button? Tiffany, will you just remind me, how did I get it on my website? There. Go to shaktimalan.com and then go to offerings. And drop down to the Soulmate Within Course 2017. All right, and that will take you directly to the page. Or otherwise, just click on the link at the bottom of the screen in the chat box. So if you have a look at this page, The Soulmate Within, you can see that what I'm really inviting you to is a 7-week journey where you're going to be meeting with me live on video once a week, and with the intention of exploring this inner relationship. Much of what I've been introducing you to on this call today is an introduction to what I'm covering there on that call, in that course. I mean, I'm sure that you can gather from what I've said so far that it would be really helpful to have a container of practice with practices that support you in exploring these dimensions of the masculine and feminine that I've been speaking about so far. So if you scroll down on the page and you get to the section that says what we're going to be exploring, let me just see on here what you'll learn. Here are the 7 modules that we're going to be addressing. The first one is simply just getting to know, getting to meet your inner masculine and feminine, and discovering that actually both of those do live inside of you. Whatever your sexual orientation is or your relationship preference, we have both masculine and feminine aspects inside of us. And so in this first meeting, I'm going to be introducing you to a deeper understanding of how to see them, how to meet them, and who they are on these 3 different levels, the unconscious, the conscious, and the deep masculine and feminine. And then if you scroll down to the second session, you'll see I've given it the title Gremlins and Garlands Revealed. And this is where we're going to be looking at all those unconscious caricatures that live inside of us and that tend to show up in our relationship life. As I've indicated to you before, that is the reason why we end up acting the way that we do, that we don't want to in relationships, is because of these unconscious archetypes that live in us and that we don't consciously relate to until we do, which is the opportunity I'm going to be creating for you there. In the third session, now we're going to start to develop a deeper relationship between my inner masculine and feminine. And the practice that I'm going to be introducing you to there is in psychological terms called Gestalt work, where we use 3 pillows. There's a pillow that you're sitting on, and then you choose a significant person in your life. You can go and try it at home. That you at this point have a difficult relationship with. There's something there that isn't quite complete, and it keeps pulling attention to itself. It keeps attracting your attention. And so then choose a person, and then imagine that you put that person in the pillow. It can be a child, it can be a lover, it can be anybody. Then from your pillow, you're speaking to the person in the other pillow, your lover, for instance. Let's say I'm speaking to my lover, and I'm saying to him, you know what? I just feel like you're not as committed in this relationship as I am. And I feel like I've just hit my limit. I need to know, do you want to be with me or not? All right, so once you've said what you want to say, then you actually shift and you go and sit in the pillow of your lover in this case, and you become your lover, speaking back to yourself. And so if I were to shift my attention, I got up and I got into the pillow of my lover, I'm just doing this in an imaginary way, then the lover might respond and say, you know what, you think you're really committed to me, but I feel like deep down, you actually have always felt that you deserve somebody better than me. And so I'm not actually feeling like you are as committed to me as you think you are. So then I go back to my pillow and I listen. Okay, right. Well, that sounds true to me actually. So then I respond back to my lover and I say to him, that's a pretty tender thing you just expressed there. I feel ashamed of it, that it's actually true, that there is something in me that feels that. So you're going to keep going back and forth between the pillows, and then at some point you're going to sit in the third pillow, which is the witness pillow, from where we're going to have a good look at what this dynamic that you see in your outer relationship life has to say about your inner relationship life. And an example, in this example that I've just made up, if I were to sit in the witness and I were to look at this dynamic between me and my lover, it would point me to the fact that there's something inside of me that is always looking for something better. So it's actually the voice of the inner critic. It's also the voice of the inner judge, the perfectionist in me that would say, what you've got is just not good enough and you need to improve. And so I could then notice also that actually it's that place in me that would feel like what I've got isn't good enough is actually coming from my feminine, and is probably having an impact on the way that I'm relating to men in my life. So that would be an example of the kind of work that we're going to be doing in that session. Then the fourth session, I'm calling Getting Juicy Together, because it's now, once there's been that first date between your inner masculine and feminine, and you've met them, oh, this is actually how they're relating to each other. Now I know where I'm standing, but now how do I develop that relationship? What do I do about this feminine that is so critical? And so in this session, we do the deeper work, the relating work inside ourselves to develop the aspects of us that are needing to develop in order for our outer relationships also to be more functional. Then we get to the sixth session, where we're going to dive deep into these higher qualities of the masculine and feminine. Actually, session 6 and session 7, we start to have a look at those finer potentials where the feminine in us is able to feel so much. And we're also going to be exploring some tantric body practices and relational practices that invite us to being able to feel more inside our bodies, to open our hearts more, despite what is happening in our lives and in our relationship lives. And also to develop that level of clarity and stillness that is so beautiful in the inner masculine, and to be able to bring that to our relationship life. You can read there what past participants have said about this course. It has literally been life-changing for so many people that I know, not only in terms of their relationship lives, but also in terms of their ability to be functional in their living lives, in their work environment, in their parenting, in their friendships, in their every aspect of our lives. You'll see if you scroll down that I'm including for you in this course a number of bonuses. I've written a very beautiful ebook in which I'm outlining all the practices that I'll be introducing on the course. There are a number of bonus workshops. The first is with a very beautiful couple that are well known in the world for starting the movement medicine practice, and they're sharing some very heart-opening discoveries in their own long journey of relationship together. There's also another couple, Anaya and Pete, that are Tantra teachers and have beautiful wisdom to share. And the work of Stuart Suwatsky, who shares with us how to use appreciation, the practice of appreciation, to deepen our relationship life. And then a final couple, Azra and Seren, that are also magnificent teachers in the world with a beautiful relationship that they talk about in this call. The way that it's going to work, people, you have to scroll up, I tell you that, is that there's a weekly live video call with me. And then there's going to be a practice call every week with a senior student that you can participate in. It's under what you'll receive. There's going to be a weekly short video in which you will see me demonstrating the practices and the techniques I'm introducing during that week. There are transcripts, written transcripts of every session that I'm doing. You will have access to an exclusive community where we will be posting our assignments and our experience of the exercises. This is a beautiful opportunity to build community that we will also be doing on Facebook, and a place where a lot of learning and growth happens. I'm going to be doing 2 follow-up calls after the course is finished, just so that you have enough time to catch up, because I know that sometimes people fall behind, and you will have access to all the materials for at least 6 months after we actually sign you up initially. But if you find yourself having fallen behind, and even if you stayed with the course, we will have 2 more opportunities in the 2 months following the end of the course for you to keep checking in with me and bringing your questions. During each one of the teaching calls, there will also be a significant opportunity for coaching. So any of the questions that come up in your life, you're welcome to ask me, and we can work with them in the group call. All right, people, so at this point, I'm going to just invite you very warmly to have a look at that course. It is a very beautiful piece of work that is a life-changing opportunity. You'll see that if you go down to the register button, that the cost that's involved is not that significant, purposely making it really accessible. And to register, you are warmly invited. And at this point, what I'd like to do also then is to invite you to ask me any questions you'd like to ask. You can do that by typing into the chat box, and we will be able to read the questions. Or otherwise, if you'd like to show up on video or audio or both, then please just, will you type in the chat box that you'd like to come onto video live, and we will be able to answer that. In terms of the price, there is basically an American price, and for the South Africans, it's translated into rands. But everybody else, you can just have a look on Google. Google will give you a conversion rate for dollars to your local currency, just in response to the question that Carol asked. And while I'm waiting for questions to come in, and just to share with you that for me, this has been one of the greatest discoveries in my life, is that I am not actually limited in my relationship life by the experiences of relationship that I've had so far, that I'm not limited by the fears and the beliefs that have built up in me inside a lifetime of experience, but that I can do the inner work. And really, whether I'm in a relationship currently or not, I can work with all the material that is there in my life and start to process that in a way that sets me free from the double binds that have maybe unconsciously kept me in a specific formation of relationship until this moment in my life. And that also then enables me to open up my heart, open up my body, so that I can start to be more available for real deep intimacy. So again, just inviting you, if you want to type any questions that you have for me into the chat box in Zoom, I would be more than happy to answer them. If there's anything that's happening in your relationship life that you'd like to ask about, anything that came up for you during the session, the teaching session that you found interesting and that you'd like to get more input on, you're more than welcome to ask me a question. While I'm waiting for questions to come in, I want to actually invite us all to take a moment to just drop inside. And so if you're able to just close your eyes and to take a few deep breaths. And with every out breath, to try out the breath and find yourself dropping deeper into your body. Dropping right down into your seat. Allowing the force of gravity to support you. And as you breathe, noticing the sensations inside your body. Noticing the sensations of the breath itself, how it expands you with the in-breath. And how every out-breath is an invitation to let go. And so I invite you to let this next in-breath be for you a prayer of expansion. May I have the opportunity in my life to expand into the next level of possibility in my relationship life. May I have the possibility and the ability to expand into that which my soul is longing for. May I be able to embody the love that I want to be. And then with the out-breath, with every out-breath, with that sigh, a prayer of letting go. Please take from me everything that no longer serves me. Please release me from everything that I've been attached to, whether consciously or unconsciously. Please free me from that which would keep me from the next step in my evolution. And then just a few more deep breaths as I invite you to focus into the center of your head, into a point in the center of your head. And in this point, dropping into deep stillness, accessing a place beyond thought, the vast mind. And then from that point, following a line, an energetic line to the very top of your head, the fontanelle, and imagining the crown of your head opening up. And then from high above your head, through this open point at the top of your skull, you're receiving a downpouring of light from the invisible realms, or from your own God essence. Allowing that light to pour into your body, filling up your head, your neck, your heart, your torso, your sex, your legs, your entire body and your entire being. And as you drink in that light, resting in the knowing that your prayer has been heard, you can simply relax into the receiving. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. All right, people. That was beautiful to share with you. I have a number of questions coming in. I'm going to just have a look at them quickly and see where to start. Mark has raised his hand, so I'm actually going to give Mark an opportunity to come live first. So let's see, Mark, if you can see if you can put your video and your audio live. You'll find the button for that at the bottom of your screen. Then your video will come up as well. Let's see if Mark is able to do that. Mark's iPad, let's see. Maybe I can do it for you. Unmute. Mark, you are on audio. No. Unmute Mark. There you are. All right. You are live. Hello.
Well, I think something that did grab me was the not good enough, which it seems like in every relationship I seem to be on one side or the other, where either I'm not good enough or my partner is, or I'm feeling my partner isn't quite good enough.
Yes.
And I wonder not only how to work with it myself, but how to raise that as a topic of conversation with the other person.
Mm-hmm. By the way, you've got your thumb over your video.
Okay.
That might be a good shot. Take your thumb off your video.
Whoops, and now I'm out of it. Okay. And now I see what a mess my hair is. All right.
Your hair is just perfectly fine. But definitely what I'm hearing is that there is a not good enough voice that is coming up that probably has a strong opposite, Mark, which probably goes something like, they're not good enough for me, or a part of you that can be critical.
Yes, a part of me that can be critical, combining with a part that always worries.
Right.
And but usually, I think that there's also this other dynamic that seems very frequent, and that either myself or the other person is the more needy of the two, and that has changed in different relationships.
Okay, so
which is a bit of a mystery. Uh-huh.
I can see that you really want to move because you're moving all the time while you're speaking to me.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna invite you to explore this moving landscape inside of you through a movement practice. We're going to do this quickly so you can see. So I want you to choose one polarity that happens in your relationship life, whether it be I'm completely independent and I'm needy, or whether it be I'm not good enough and I'm too good, or choose a polarity that you see playing out and tell me which one you're choosing.
Okay, the I'm not good enough versus they're not good.
You're not good enough, or I'm too good for you.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Some
Find one spot. Find one spot and stand still on that spot of the earth, all right? Now, in that spot, I want you to find a gesture, a body movement, and a sound or words that express the one that feels not good enough.
Oh, something like that.
Yes, beautiful. That's great. Oh, with this kind of gesture. Now step to another spot. Change position, so you're in another spot and then stand still. Okay, stand still. Now express the one that feels like he's too good for your partner.
Come on now.
Great. And what would be the gesture of that one? What would that one do?
I think I need to. It's not showing up. I can't quite figure out where to get the camera, but it's like a hand on my hip and looking down.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah, and I can imagine that. Okay, wonderful. Now step back to the first position and do that gesture again.
Oh.
Yes, exactly. Now step to the other one.
Come on now.
Okay, great. Keep doing that. Step from the one to the other.
Oh. Come on.
Uh-huh.
Oh. Come on now. Oh. I can see after 8 hours of doing this. Oh. Come on now. Oh. Come on now. Oh. Come on.
Okay, you can stop there for now, Mark. Put your face back in the screen so I can see you.
Come back here.
Wow. Okay, so that was great. Thank you for that. And to complete the exercise, you have to keep doing that. But you keep going faster and faster, and then at some point, something will happen where those two gestures will become a third gesture. Something else will come out.
Okay.
In the meantime, I think what you've already discovered is that as you embody each side of the polarity, you start to find it in yourself more. And I bet you were a little bit surprised to hear the critical one. That says, "Oh, come on now."
I'm not that surprised.
Yeah, but the point is to consciously own that part and to know, okay, I have that in me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one step towards answering your question. Obviously, it would be a bigger process to really complete your question, but this is a very good exercise to try for what you're talking about, because there's a polarity acting out, and the more we can know the polarity in our bodies and step from the one to the other, at some point we get to a place where we are less identified with one position or the other. Mm-hmm. And then we're able to develop more of a conscious and empowered relationship with what's happening in our lives, in that polarity playing out.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Thank you, Mark, for showing up. It was good to meet you.
Yeah. By the way, a technical question.
Yes.
If something comes up that I want to write, I didn't quite get the instruction of where to just type something.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being willing to be on video. I'm going to take you off video now, right?
Okay, great.
Um,
Whoops. Lost the whole thing.
all right, people, sorry, I put down my video instead of Mark's. So,
Okay, I
Mark,
lost it.
you're still on audio. Can you please mute yourself?
Let's see if I.
Otherwise, I'll get Tiffany to do it for you. All right, let's see. All right, I'm going to continue with questions. There's quite a few coming in. Pernilla saying, my husband has always had strong sexual energy and I really want to share that with him. But I feel so blocked and I really don't know how to share this energy with him or even with myself. Pernilla, you know, that sounds to me very much like some of what I pointed to as dynamics of the unconscious feminine. In that, there probably are elements of your emotional body that are not fully met and integrated in you. So in other words, if you were to do the course with me, you would probably discover that you've been believing that you're, can I say, like you're fully present in the relationship there, but there's a younger part of you that is actually still unconsciously looking for something else, maybe even for the love of your father, or maybe something happened earlier on in your life, but something happened somewhere along the line where your sexual body is not able to open to your husband, and oftentimes the reason for that is because something happening in the emotional body, because your heart doesn't feel deeply met, because there's something that you need which you haven't expressed. That can often be the reason. It could also be that your husband is approaching you sexually in a way that doesn't feel intimate enough for you, where it loses the sense of the bond, of the intimate bond between you. And so sometimes our being blocked sexually also has to do with a past experience where our nervous system actually got overwhelmed or even traumatized. And so if that is the case, then of course it's very good to get some therapeutic support for that, and specifically somatically or body-based, body-oriented therapy that can support the nervous system in meeting the place of fear and helping it to slowly end. So I definitely think that the course would be helpful for you, or therapeutic work, or both of them. Swati is asking, what is conscious love? And so I would say, Swati, on the level of the relationship between the conscious masculine and feminine, there is this conscious invitation to meet as the beloved. So if you have a relationship in your life, let's just start with that because I think you do, then it's the choice to meet not just as an activity in your intimate life, not just meet as an activity that happens because you both turned on, but to actually come together in the choice, almost as though you're going to meditate together or do a sacred ritual together. And then in that meeting, the feminine aspects of you and your partner invite through the practices, which I will also introduce on the course, invite an opening of the body to feel. That begins with conscious breathing. Becoming aware of the in-breath, becoming aware of the out-breath, becoming aware of the sensation of the expansion, the opportunity to release with breath. Then the feminine in us also is invited to open her heart and the quality of love, for the quality of love to be evoked as that which initiates the love making or the conscious love between the partners. The masculine aspect of us brings that quality of stillness, one-pointed focus, and unmoving presence. Because if we're truly going to meet as lovers, our attention needs to be here with each other in this interaction, right? Not all over the show with 10,000 other interests going on as well. And so that grounded, deep presence is also very needed. So cultivating the ability to stay present, to stay inside your body, and to keep your heart open. Those are three elements of what is involved in conscious love and also in conscious love making. Joanne saying, thank you. I have to go. Okay. She just said thank you. Val. Beautiful. I'm just noticing some people are just posting comments. Here is a question from Joanne Corrigal, and she's saying, in the last few months, I am either attracting to 20-somethings old, I'm 43 years old, or polyamorous, flaky men who seem to want every woman that walks in front of them. What could this be about? Wow, Joanne. Well, the young ones could be that you're meeting a younger part of you that is enjoying that younger sexual energy. When we're in our 20s, we have a different kind of sexual energy with a lot of vitality in it, and also a lot of playfulness and drive, different elements. I'm sure that you found that in these relationships with or the attraction to the young ones, that it would have evoked those parts of you, and maybe they were not fully lived in you or fully experienced. Or maybe there were younger parts of you that you had to meet in those relationships. The attraction to what you're calling the polyamorous flaky men might be a part of you that feels that you're not really worthy of a deeply committed relationship. Maybe something in your psyche that keeps pushing men away that might be more available. I would suggest to you, have a look in the relationships around you for examples of men who show and who are deeply committed and have the kind of qualities that you're looking for in your life right now. And if you start to notice that, even if it's just in your friendships, you start to invite those qualities into your life. And as you do that, you might become more aware of what the dynamics are that keep you from being able to attract these men in your life, or that have so far caused that in your life. I hope that's useful as an answer. AMM, I'm in a relationship with a man whom I have a difficult time communicating with or getting through to. I'm a word person, I'm able to express myself, and he is not. It does not matter how concisely I try to express myself to him. He has a hard time concentrating on my words or understanding me. Or he's not receptive. It's a long question, so I'm just speeding up. You're asking for specific boundaries. Oh, like having him not touch you at certain times, to give you personal space. How can I gain some clarity around this issue without constantly trying to get him to hear me and show up more consciously, or trying to find the right way to communicate to him? So it sounds to me quite clear that communicating with him in words is not going to be the way, and that he is probably somebody who communicates through touch. So I would suggest to you that you go and have a good look at what your resistance to touch is about, and understand that for many people there's a resistance to touch because they believe that their partners will want to have sex if there's any touch at all. But you might need to have a look at how you've developed an emotional defense against feeling sensations in your body. my guess would be that your partner would understand the language of touch and even feeling, emotional feeling, better than he's going to understand you logically explaining to him what you need. Of course, there also is all possibility that we've outgrown a relationship. It's always worth asking ourselves whether we're still with the partner that we need to be with. You can do some polarity work around your desire to touch, your fear of touching, your desire not to touch, and your fear of not touching. And then make a list. Why do you want touch? Why don't you want touch? Why would you rather avoid touch? What's your fear of avoiding touch? And then once you've completed that, you can offer up a prayer and ask for the integration of the polarities. That is one of the techniques that I teach on the course. And you can also find it in my book, Basic Sexual Shadow Work, which you will have if you've ever signed up for my newsletter. Nymph says, how does one reawaken their sexual union after being married for 31 years? It feels like we have moved into a season of drought for some time. I noticed a decline of interest after having a complete hysterectomy. It seems as though we both have lost interest in sexual exploration. We have strong meditation or prayer life together. How do we regain momentum in venturing out into new places? We're now in our 60s. Beautiful question. And I would say in response that, ironically, even though we may be developing spiritually and in other areas, unless we've specifically been paying attention to our sexual life and our sexual development, oftentimes our sexual relationship has stayed very much on the level of one could say, the unconscious masculine and feminine, where a lot of the sexual drive is really motivated by the movement of neurochemicals that have a procreative function. And so they create highs, they create excitement, they create bonding and all sorts of things. And the main reason why those chemicals are in our body is actually to make sure that we procreate as a species. So that then when we get to the age where lovemaking is no longer going to be about procreation, we feel the loss of those forms of arousal that were so easily accessible maybe in our 20s, etc. And this is the time then when it becomes important to develop a conscious relationship between the masculine and the feminine in ourselves and with each other, a conscious sexual relationship, which means taking on intimacy practices that not necessarily are sexual, but can move towards sexual intercourse, where our intimate meeting becomes a form of meditation or prayer. And I introduced some of those practices on this course, The Soulmate Within. You can also find it in my 10 Tantric Partner Meditation series, where I've actually given 10 of those practices. So that might be something beautiful for the two of you to explore as well. And then, of course, ultimately we move into the development of the deep union that is the deep masculine and feminine. But I would suggest that for you two, it's now time to start developing the conscious intimacy practices, which is very different from just falling in bed and hoping that sex is going to happen. It's a gradual building up of intimacy through breathing together, through sitting together, through the bodies gradually coming closer together with more attentiveness, more subtlety, more ability to feel and to feel each other. Those are all things that we can cultivate. And the course will give you a good introduction for that, and also the other course that I just mentioned. I'm going to take one or two more questions. Patricia says, I've been in relationships most of my life. I came to the point I really want to stay single for a while and get to know my own energy and reconnect to myself without mixing it with the other. Yes, it doesn't matter if you're not English speaking. She says, I'm trying to explore my integrity. I really easily fall into another, and this is my usual pattern. I also discovered this tendency in my lineage. Yes, would this course be good for me to discover more and dig through this subject? Absolutely, Patricia. This is a beautiful course for those of us who want to take seriously that our first beloved is really ourselves, and that we're in the places where we've projected energy out or have expected our outer relationships to make us happy, that we really need to return to ourselves. And so I have created the course as an opportunity for that beautiful, deep exploration. So, okay, one more. Let's see. Sarah saying, I'd love to understand more deeply this aspect from within or without reflections. So many women, including myself, I attract 1 in 7, attract violent men. I'd love to work with this within, so it can perhaps heal I can perhaps heal myself and other women. Yes, Sarah, she asked if there are any tips there. When you do the pillar talk exercise, the 3-pillar exercise, which I introduced on this call, you can have a conversation with the violent man. Maybe if it's not too overwhelming for you, you can even put the perpetrator in your own experience in the other pillar and speak to him and ask him why did he do that. Another way of approaching it is to have a look to see where you are being a perpetrator in your own life. So where has your relationship with yourself developed a less than loving quality? Where do you constantly judge yourself? Where do you put yourself down? Where do you insistently believe that you're not good enough? There's so many different angles that we use in order to victimize ourselves, because we just haven't learned how to truly and deeply love ourselves. There is an exercise which I sometimes do with people, which is called the victim triangle, where we identify in what ways we feel like victims, and then how we show up in life as rescuers, and start to see how the rescuer in us is actually trying to rescue the victim in us. And then also to find the predator in us, the aspect of us that actually wants to do harm, that wants to, and if it's not towards somebody else, towards us ourselves. And so once we develop a more conscious relationship with those 3 aspects of the victim triangle in us, there oftentimes is a shift in the tendency to attract people outside of us that embody that predator or that victim energy. Another final thing that I can mention that is worth knowing is that sometimes our inner masculine, in response to having been violated maybe when we were young or at an earlier age when we were less conscious, starts to become in the first place a protector, and not only a protector but a kind of a guard. And then that guard will develop a relationship with men outside, which is very much kind of blocking off the opportunity for real intimacy. And so sometimes we have to have a conversation with that guard to make sure that he's not actually turning every man in our inner world into a potential predator. Yeah. So Patricia's last question there, she says, are there any assignments on the course to finish it? There are only questions, Patricia, and the questions you can respond to. You don't have to, but you can respond to them in the on the forum which we're creating, this private website, if you want to share and if you want to get other people's input and feedback as well. But you certainly don't have to do that. All right. So one more, Victoria, saying, I'm only attracted to emotionally not available men. I'm single already for 6 years. I would love to help to change that. Yes, so if that's a pattern, so many of us have had that experience that we keep attracting people that are not available, then there's still something in our inner relationship life which we are not conscious of that actually is not in a place of good relating. There's a big standoff going on. There's a big war going on between my inner masculine and feminine. And what that looks like and how to work with it is the work that we're going to be doing on the Soulmate Within course. It's a deeper exploration. This call was just an introduction for you. And I hope that it served you. I'm sure that you've learned some things. It's been a total pleasure for me to be here with you. And again, just inviting you to go and have a look at the course, The Soulmate Within. I'm just going to ask Tiffany to type in the link to the website again. And I look forward to continuing to explore that with you more for those of you who wish to sign up there. And for the rest of you and for all of you, thank you so much for participating in this webinar. I send you lots of love and blessings from Abidjania in Brazil. Namaste and goodbye for now.